On February 13th, 2021, a retired couple in Somerset, England, sat down to celebrate a birthday. They'd been married nearly 25 years, and on the menu for dinner that evening was lobster and steak. But before the night was over, one half of this long-married couple would be accused of turning a perfectly ordinary meal into a violent crime scene. Investigators would later trace the tension back to a frustrating video call, the pressure of COVID lockdown, and an argument that escalated far beyond what anyone could have expected. What unfolded next would challenge the picture of peaceful retirement in the seaside corner of England, and the arrest that followed would leave an experienced officer at a loss for words. A house call from police is rarely a pleasant moment, unless apparently it happens in England. Because when officers arrived at a tiny seaside bungalow in Somerset on the cold winter night of 2011, the tone was disarmingly polite.
Hey madam, do you want to just step outside for me a minute? Can you come outside?
Yes.
Thank you.
A small white-haired woman, 66-year-old Penelope Jackson, who preferred to be called Penny, quietly complied. At first glance, it looked less like the opening moments of a murder investigation and more like a very awkward social call. But Penny wasted no time getting to the point. She told officers her husband was on the kitchen floor, then stepped outside in her pajamas as if she was seeing guests off after dinner.
Under arrest suspicion of attempt murder, mate.
Under arrest with suspicion of attempt murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence. You do not mention when questioned anything you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
Might go in and see what they do.
Yeah. Could I get my coat?
Just bear with me 2 seconds.
In there. I admit it all.
All right.
Just get them. All right, I want to go in. All right.
No,
So-
he's on the kitchen floor.
Can someone just stay with Devon while I go in?
There's nothing nasty, and I'm certainly not. My coat's in the.
Yeah, just
Ow,
wait
it's
2
a bit
seconds.
hot.
All right, you okay? You all right?
With any luck, they'll be
What
too
had just
late.
happened inside that quiet retirement home?
Right.
And why was Penelope Jackson behaving as though police had simply dropped by for tea, while her husband, of nearly 3 decades, lay bleeding in the kitchen? The answer would come later. For now, officers guided Penny toward the patrol car, one of them still unfailingly polite, offering to retrieve her coat from the inside.
What colour's your
Go
coat?
in the front.
Yeah.
Grey wardrobe.
Okay, it might be a while, all right, but I'll try and get it. There's obviously a lot going on, okay?
Oh,
but
with any luck, it'll be too late.
Penelope, my advice is don't talk about it now, okay?
At the police station, the tone didn't change. If anything, Penny seemed almost conversational. At one point, she even apologized. Not for what had happened back at her home, but for being, in her words, a nuisance.
Mind your head.
Yeah. Rightio. I'm very sorry for being a nuisance.
No, we just got to take a temperature, okay?
Yeah.
After officers checked her temperature, as per COVID protocol, Penny didn't resist one more remark.
So that'd be just really great. Get COVID on the top of it.
Penelope Jackson didn't appear confused about what had transpired in her home that evening. In fact, she seemed oddly focused on whether it had been done properly or not.
No, I have no intention of not agreeing to what I've done.
Okay.
I know what I've done.
All right.
And I know why I've done it. And if I haven't done it properly, I'm really annoyed.
Back inside the bungalow, investigators would determine the attack had started upstairs in the couple's bedroom, with a trail of blood leading down to the kitchen. Beneath the crime scene, it was clear the home was normally immaculate, the kind of bright, carefully kept space maintained by proud retirees. White cupboards lined the kitchen, glass doors opening toward a garden and a hot tub. One decorative sign hanging on the wall read, "Smartest thing a man ever said is yes, dear." But the once cheerful home had now been overtaken by something else entirely. Blood marked the cabinets and across the surfaces, and 78-year-old David Jackson lay unresponsive in the kitchen. He'd been stabbed 3 times with a kitchen knife. In just a few hours, it would be Valentine's Day. But inside the Jackson home, anything but love was in the air. Long before that night in Somerset, David had built most of his adult life around structure and service. As a careerman in the British Royal Air Force, David was disciplined, widely traveled, deeply committed to the job. Over the years, he worked his way up through the ranks, eventually becoming a lieutenant colonel. But while David's military career was solid, his personal life seemed far less settled. By the time he reached his 40s, he'd already been through a divorce and had remarried. He also was the father of 3 children. In the early 1990s, David was stationed at RAF Cranwell in Lincolnshire. Penelope was working on base in a civilian administration role, and it was there the first 2 met. Although she was 12 years younger, her own relationship history in some ways was just as complicated as his. Penelope had married for the first time at 18, in what she would later describe as a violent relationship. Her second marriage later came to an end after her husband disclosed he was gay. By the time she met David, she was in her 3rd marriage to a man named Alan. But while Alan was frequently working abroad in the Middle East, Penelope and David were spending more and more time together back in England. At some point, the line between colleagues quietly disappeared, and an affair began. Not long after Alan learned about the relationship, he died by suicide. At the time of his death, Penelope was pregnant with his daughter Isabel. In the aftermath, Penelope informed David's wife about the affair, and another marriage came to an end. Then, in 1996, David and Penelope married, beginning a relationship that would last nearly 25 years. And from the outside, it looked like the 2 of them had finally found their footing. But what no one could see yet was just how fragile that footing really was. The same year David and Penelope married, their life shifted again. Work took them to Germany, another relocation, another reset, something both of them were already used to after years of moving for their careers. Penelope in particular had lived and worked abroad before, including time in France and Sierra Leone. And to friends on the outside, the couple appeared happy together. But inside the marriage, tensions were beginning to surface. According to Penny, David became increasingly angry when reminded of her late husband Alan, Isabel's biological father. She later claimed his temper could be triggered by small things left around the house, including old wedding photos of Penelope and Alan. She once said David had taken an axe to their furniture. Around the same time, tragedy struck David's family when his adult son Gavin died by suicide. In a note left behind, Gavin wrote that he didn't want to be like his father. At the time, David and Penelope and young Isabel were still living in Germany. Years later, Isabel would describe a very different atmosphere inside their home. She recalled once being woken at night by her father and told to retrieve a Mother's Day gift she bought for Penelope, a mug filled with chocolates. And after Isabel brought it to him, she said David smashed the mug into pieces. On another occasion, Isabel remembered coming home from school and seeing her father shoving her mother against a wall, leaving Penelope with a bloody nose. That night, mother and daughter packed a bag and went to a hotel. Isabel also described a family barbecue in Germany, where she said David held a knife to Penelope's throat, an incident she recalled that took 3 people to defuse. But not everyone interpreted the marriage the same way. One of David's daughters publicly described Penelope as the more dominant force in the relationship, suggesting her father wouldn't have been proud to admit he was struggling inside the marriage. She later said it felt like everything always had to revolve around Penelope, that she was a very larger-than-life character, and that she enjoyed making people feel uncomfortable. Years later, after Isabel had grown up and the couple retired, David and Penelope divided their time between a second home in southwest France and the bungalow in Somerset. By then, their life had settled into a quieter routine of gardening, hosting dinners, and taking cruises. Neighbors on the street they lived on described them as pleasant and house-proud, but just 2 months before the stabbing, something happened that suggested the calm they maintained was beginning to fracture. Just days before Christmas in December of 2020, Penelope placed a call to 999, telling the operator her husband was threatening her with a fire poker, an argument that started over a TV remote. According to Penelope, she'd locked David in the conservatory to give him time to calm down, but it didn't work. Instead, she said, David smashed his way out using a fire poker for the wood stove. When officers arrived, the incident was recorded as an assault, and the couple were instructed to spend the night apart. But for Penelope, the episode raised a deeper concern. She believed David's aggression had been escalating and suspected it might be connected to a recent medical procedure he'd undergone, a deep brain stimulation intended to help control his tremors and involved implanted electrodes that are supposed to regulate brain electrical activity. According to Penelope, he'd been struggling to adjust to the device in the weeks leading up to the incident. David was also dealing with significant health issues, including brain tremors. A few days later, when police followed up, Penelope reported David had since calmed down. She said he'd adjusted to the settings on the medical device and claimed he had no memory of what had happened that night. But the incident, as brief as it was, would take on a new significance in the weeks that followed. For Penny's 66th birthday, her daughter Isabel arranged something special, a 5-star Michelin meal kit to be delivered to her parents' home in Somerset. Because of COVID restrictions, their family couldn't gather in person. So instead, Isabel and her husband planned to join Penny and David for that evening on a video call. According to family accounts, arguments had erupted over things as small as a cheese board. On more than one occasion, David had thrown food Penelope prepared down the garbage disposal. So when Penelope added a homemade side dish to their 5-star Michelin meal that evening, a traditional British favorite known as Bubble and Squeak, the mood began to shift. Penelope would later say he viewed Bubble and Squeak, a dish traditionally made from leftovers, as low class. Over video, Isabel could see the dynamic unfold in real time, but the evening hadn't finished escalating, because the next flashpoint wasn't on the table, it was on the screen. Partway through the birthday dinner, the battery on David and Penelope's iPad began to run low, and what had already been a tense evening quickly shifted focus. From the disagreement over Bubble and Squeak to a new frustration, finding a charger. Voices rose, and then the screen went dark. Now, for many families, a dropped video call would be little more than a minor annoyance, but inside the Jackson home, small frustrations had a history of escalating. Well, after her parents' iPad went black, Isabel waited several minutes to see if her parents would come back online. And when Penelope reappeared on the screen, Isabel could immediately tell something was wrong. Her mother's eyes were red, and she could clearly see she'd been crying. But after a few more minutes, the call ended again. This time, Isabel believed the situation had settled, but she had no way of knowing it would be the last time she'd see her parents together. After the video call ended and dinner was over, the tension inside the house didn't ease. According to Penelope, she'd went to the spare bedroom and told David she'd had enough. At some point, she placed a knife under her pillow and threatened suicide. David's response, she'd later say, was blunt. He told her to get on with it, called her pathetic, and told her to go back to bed. In that moment, Penelope later claimed her thinking shifted. Why should it be me? It's you. What happened next unfolded quickly. Penelope picked up the knife and stabbed David in the chest, aiming for his heart. Afterward, again according to her account, Penelope left the bedroom and calmly began writing a note. In a coil-bound notebook she wrote, "To whom it may concern, I have taken so much abuse over the years. Look at my records in Germany, but he was a good daddy. However, the mask slipped tonight, and that was unforgivable. I accept my punishment. May he rot in hell." After the initial stabbing, David was still alive and managed to dial 999 himself. While still on the phone, Penelope stabbed David again, delivering what would become the third and final wound. Moments later, Penelope took control of the call.
And are you with him now?
Well, I might just go and stab him again, but
All right, do not stab him again.
why?
Okay, so just listen to my voice. Okay?
Yes.
Stay on the line with me.
I am complimented.
Okay, are you with the patient now?
Well, I'm in the lounge and he's in the kitchen bleeding to death with any luck.
All right, so just stay on the line with me.
Look, this is not, you're not paid enough to do with this. It's not fair.
Okay, well, ultimately, madam, I'm listening to your voice, and you're the help I have available, so we need to help him, okay?
No, I'm not.
All right, madam,
I don't...
how many times have you stabbed him?
I did the once,
You did the once?
and then he said I wouldn't do it again, so I did it twice more.
So, okay. So, in total, how many times?
3 times.
3 times, okay.
Once I thought I'd get his heart, well, he hasn't got one, and then twice in the abdomen.
After receiving the 999 call from David, emergency responders arrived quickly at the couple's quiet Somerset home. Outside, in the small brick-walled garden, Penelope Jackson was taken into custody on suspicion of attempted murder. But even as officers cautioned her to remain silent for her own protection, Penelope kept talking. Again and again, she continued to admit what she'd done. By the time she arrived at the police station, the situation had changed because David Jackson had died. So the charge was upgraded from attempted murder to murder.
All right, Penny. I'm further arresting you for murder.
Oh, good.
I've already cautioned you,
Yes.
so your necessities for your arrest is for a prompt and effective investigation
Yep.
and to stop further harm.
Penelope Jackson pled guilty to manslaughter, but not murder, citing violence and coercive behavior at the hands of her husband. At trial, she testified that David would prevent her from seeing friends and even controlled what she watched on TV. She also testified he previously headbutted her, thrown her down the stairs, and strangled her until she was unconscious. Penelope's specific line of defense claimed loss of control, that years of abuse at the hands of David had caused her to change her course of action in the moment from intending self-harm with a knife to turning it on David instead when he encouraged her to self-harm. Prosecutors dismissed this claim, arguing instead that the murder had been premeditated and that Penelope had written the note before the initial stabbing instead of after, as Penelope had testified. They claimed it would have been impossible to write the note at the same time she was on the phone with emergency dispatch. The trial lasted 2.5 weeks, and a jury of 4 men and 8 women deliberated for 11 hours before finding Penelope Jackson guilty of murder. In the aftermath of Penelope Jackson's conviction, debate around the case didn't disappear. The Center for Women in Justice issued a statement in support of Penelope's appeal. The group said they were horrified by the outcome and argued there needs to be a radical transformation in the criminal justice system, which is still steeped in misogynistic myths and stereotypes. Women are punished more severely if they resist, whereas men who snap and kill for no reason get off lightly. The saddest last word on the case came from the victim's impact statement of their daughter Isabel, who was pregnant at the time of the trial. "I have lost the man that was always there for me, no matter what. The man that came and fixed things in my house. The man that could make me laugh. I have also lost the woman who always knew how to make me feel better. The woman who was my friend, my champion, my support. The woman who cared, cherished, and loved me. Yes, I know my mom is here, but she's not the same person I knew." Thanks again for watching, and if you like what we're doing here, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And remember, take care of yourselves and each other.